you ever got a team together for a brainstorm and been really disappointed with the level of engagement and the ideas that came out? It happens most of the time, and it's uncomfortable for everyone in the room, whether it's physical or virtual. And when you've had this happen a few times, you realize that there's more to unlocking great ideas than having bright minds turn up. And having facilitated workshops for a decade professionally, you get to see what works and what doesn't. So I want to share some of the ways we go about ideation for strategy, strategic OKRs, and strategically aligned ideas. There are a few aha moments to share before we talk more about the process. The first is that we are all wired differently. I am really comfortable with no preparation, standing around a whiteboard, brainstorming and problem solving. I'm also a visual thinker and love stickies and drawings and things on walls. Others absolutely hate this and want lots of notice, want to do research before the workshop, and they want to discuss ideas in a really structured way. The point is that if the goal is to unlock your best ideas, you need to make sure your process caters for a wide range of people. What was the last good idea for work or your personal life that just popped into your head? Mine was an idea or realization about this community and the cohorts we needed to create. And I had it whilst walking my dogs. Another good time for my ideas, I find, is as I'm waking up and I assume my brain has been busy during the night thinking problems through. And the truth is, these ideas don't just pop into your head. Your brain has been primed. Think of it as a whiteboard in your head with some stickies on it. Your brain knows it's there and will do its best to use any spare processing power to solve what's on that board. The key to great ideas is to prime the group. So here are some good priming questions to answer. What is the question we're solving for? What is the outcome we want? What will be expected of us during and after the workshop? And what do we need to know to help us prepare? The second aha moment is when you realize that we're neurologically wired differently. So here are some of the main types. The first is systems thinkers. Systems thinkers see the world in interconnected wholes. Think feedback loops, cause and effect chains, and emergent properties. They have a strong understanding of complexity and unintended consequences. The second, pattern thinkers. Pattern thinkers think in associations, analogies, and recurring structures. They are often visually or musically inclined. The fourth is verbal logical thinkers. So these people think in words, sequences, and step-by-step reasoning. They are strong at language, debate, categorization, and linear problem solving. Then we have visual spatial thinkers. Think of pictures, dimensions, and spatial relationships, common in architects, engineers, and artists. And different from pattern thinking, because it's more about 3D manipulation than associations. The sixth is associative divergent thinkers. Divergent thinkers make unexpected leaps between seemingly unrelated ideas, often linked to creative and lateral thinking, and commonly associated with ADHD cognitive profiles. The seventh, narrative thinkers. So these organize information as stories and sequences of events. They have strong memory for context, characters, and meaning. Think in examples and episodes rather than abstractions. The eighth is categorical and taxonomic thinkers. But there are actually more of these thinking types. But categorical thinkers naturally sort and classify. They find comfort in clear hierarchies and definitions. They have strong analytical capabilities and they're really good at structuring information. And what's interesting about these, and worth noting, is that many of these frameworks overlap with a map onto neurodivergent profiles. So for example, autistic cognition often involves pattern, visual, spatial, and detailed focused thinking. ADHD cognition often involves associative, divergent, and interest-driven thinking. Dyslexic cognition is often strongly visually spatial and narrative-based with weaker sequential processing. I've often wondered why I do what I do and why it appears easier for me than others. And the answer is probably that I have autism, which masks my ADHD well, and you can definitely throw in a splash of dyslexia as well. How we're wired fundamentally impacts what we're capable of doing, particularly in planning and ideation. But the key insight across all of this is that none of these styles is superior. They're complementary, which is why cognitively diverse teams tend to outperform homogeneous ones on complex problems. So you want a diverse range of thinking styles in a room, and you want to use a diverse range of thinking modalities to get the best ideas out of teams. And this requires a structured approach to the entire process, from briefing to ideation, from ideas to evaluation, and decision making to finally OKR creation and execution. Turning up, jotting down ideas, and choosing a few because they feel right is not good planning. So you need to develop the right skills and capabilities because these matter, as does using the right frameworks, processes, and rituals. You don't want to create dependencies on people like me. You want people like me to give you what you need to do this well across the company. So how do we optimize the ideation process? I've mentioned the first way. We prime the people who are going to be in workshops. We give them a written briefing, and we sometimes meet them as well to learn more about who they are, how they think, and what they know. The second is that we prepare the day or multi-day session really well. So for example, we're planned to do the work that requires the most brain power at the right time of the day, and least work when we're all slowing down. The third is that we use the right facilitation tools for the audience. Sometimes that includes virtual whiteboards like Miro, sometimes stickies on walls, sometimes spreadsheets. These all need to be set up and ready to use in advance. The fourth is how we use time. So time boxing matters, but there's a competing principle that we have called right timing a conversation. I've been in workshops where a topic was given an hour, and we've not been even close to finishing it, and the CEO wants to move on. So the skill that's needed is knowing how and when to flex the schedule. The fifth is keeping momentum going when teams have left the room. So when teams leave the ideation and planning sessions, they're going to be super energized. You want to bottle this and keep that momentum going. So the timing between workshops and acting on the workshops needs to be optimized. The sixth is learning by doing. So if we're working with the team to help them create OKRs for the first time, we go through the stages of defining objectives and measurable outcomes without anyone in the room knowing they're even planning OKRs. So they can have zero experience or knowledge before that. Then before you know it, they've drafted what is essentially an OKR, and you can focus the training on what they understand and are connected to, as opposed to any abstract examples, so they learn much faster. So what do you do when the ideas that you need aren't in the room? There's a particular kind of frustration that comes when you've done everything right. You've primed the team, you've got the right people together, you've created the space. Then the ideas come in, and they're fine, perfectly reasonable, incremental, safe. Me too thinking. Perhaps business as usual with a fresh coat of paint. When this happens, it's tempting to conclude that the team isn't creative enough, or the market doesn't offer much opportunity. Almost always, that's the wrong conclusion. What's actually happening is that your team is thinking inside a box they can't see. Their experience, their context, and their proximity to the day-to-day are all shaping what feels possible to them. And when people can't see the box, they can't think outside it. So how can you break that? So you can change the reference points as a starter. Me Too ideas come from looking at the same competitors, the same customers, and the same markets that you've always looked at. Look deliberately elsewhere. What are companies in adjacent industries doing? What would a challenger brand do if it entered your space tomorrow with no legacy and no fear? These questions force the brain to look at unfamiliar ground. And unfamiliar ground is often where these new ideas live. You can also challenge the assumptions underneath the brief. Often the reason teams produce safe ideas is that the question that they've been given is also a safe question. If you ask people to improve what you already do, they'll improve what you already do. So reframing the question is often more powerful than any other single intervention. Another thing you can do is bring an outside perspective in. So perhaps this is a customer who tells you something uncomfortable, a researcher who services data that challenges the consensus in the room, or a voice from outside the industry entirely. Fresh eyes don't just add ideas, they expose the assumptions that were invisible to everyone inside the room. So another thing that works is separating idea generation from idea evaluation. One of the most common killers of really bold thinking is that evaluation happens too early, when teams know their ideas will be judged immediately. They kind of do this thing called self-censoring. Give people permission to generate without judgment first, and the quality of what comes usually shifts noticeably. You can also now use AI to expand the possibilities in a space. You can use it to generate a deliberately wide range of strategic options, including ones that feel uncomfortable or counterintuitive, and use those as provocations to push the team's thinking further. You're not necessarily adopting the AI ideas, you're using them to stretch what the team considers possible. Sometimes one provocative option on the board is all it takes to unlock the idea that was hiding just beyond what felt acceptable. So the goal isn't to manufacture creativity, it's to remove the invisible ceiling that's keeping your team thinking small. And this is where something significant is happening right now, something that's changing what's possible in the ideation process in ways that would have been unheard of or unimaginable a year or so ago. AI isn't replacing the thinking, it's enhancing it. Take idea evaluation. Historically, a team would generate a long list of ideas and the best ones would be selected based on a combination of experience, gut feel, and whoever argued the most convincingly in the room. That's a flawed process, and we've always known it. And AI is changing, or beginning to change that, by bringing evidence into the conversation in real time. You can stress test an idea against market data, competitor intelligence, or historical outcomes almost instantly. The quality of the decision improves because the information available allows it to improve. The same is true for beliefs and assumptions. One of the most important and most overlooked parts of strategic planning is surfacing the assumptions that are driving your thinking. Teams often build strategies on beliefs that they've never examined. And AI is becoming a really powerful tool for challenging those assumptions constructively. Ask a steelman the opposite view to identify where the evidence doesn't support the consensus or to highlight the risks that the team hasn't considered. It does this without the politics, without the hierarchy, and without anyone losing face. But perhaps the most exciting shift is what's happening inside the workshops themselves. So we're starting to work with organizations where a dedicated researcher is in the room, using AI to pull relevant data, case studies, and evidence in real time as live conversations develop. So imagine a team debating whether to enter a new market, and within 5 minutes having a synthesis of recent market data, analogous moves by competitors, and examples of where similar bets have succeeded or failed. The conversation changes completely. You move from debate based on opinion to dialogue grounded in evidence. And the good news is you don't need to have that capability in-house. You can hire people, bring us along. Our consultants are experienced in deploying AI research in live workshop settings, so you and your team can focus entirely on the thinking and the decisions while we handle the evidence layer. A year ago, the idea of actually having live AI prompting shaping a strategic conversation in almost real time would have sounded like a stretch, something for the future, not for a workshop that's happening on a Tuesday. But it works. We've seen it work. And once a team experiences it, they don't want to go back to the way things were. And this doesn't remove the need for great facilitation, diverse thinking styles, or human judgment. That ties it all together. If anything, it raises the bar for all of those things. What it does is compress the gap between intuition and insight, between a good idea and a well-evidenced one. So the team that learns to combine structured human thinking with well-deployed AI, really does have a significant advantage, not just in the quality of their strategies, but in the speed at which they can develop and test them. A great strategy doesn't come from the loudest voice in the room or the person with the most slides. It comes from creating the conditions where different minds can do what they do best. When you get the process right, when you've primed people well, and when you've built the right structure and space, the ideas that emerge will surprise you. That's what we're here to help you do.